Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Catini webinar. Today's webinar is called Behind the Fee. We'll be talking about lots and lots of different things in regards to fees, why agents charge them, why some agents don't charge them, and we'll also have a little bit of a hot topic debate on the new home buying reforms that have been announced over the last couple of weeks. I have some wonderful guests with me today. As you'll see on the screen, we have Sharka Wild from Distinct Property Consultants in the Cotswolds, so an independent agent selling some phenomenal properties. I saw one the other day that looked absolutely amazing, but it's way out of my budget, Sharka. We also have Christian Byfield from the Depository and Base. So you probably know his face from other podcasts that he likes to frequent, but also his own podcast, The Viking Chats, which I still haven't had an invite for yet. So just saying, Christian. And then we have the lovely Anne from Maddox Knoll, so Managing Director at Maddox Knoll in Manchester, whose face you might have seen on some boards if you've been wandering around Manchester on some advertising. I've got to be honest, Anne, I never thought I'd see your face on a bus stop, but there we go. And lastly,
my mum was
proud. And lastly, we have the formidable David Mintz from Kerfuffle, who's also an industry trainer. And I've set you a really high bar there, David. So you've got to stand up to that today. So while we've done with the introductions, I kind of just want to set the scene a little bit. So as we always sort of talk about in our little cohorts at industry events and things, fees have always been really an elephant in the room for estate agents. So it's the one topic that, you know, if you put a LinkedIn post out, if you have a conversation with different model type agents, always sparks debate and questions. So to kick this off, I am going to start with let's say a big question. Why do we feel that fees are still one of the most contentious subjects in estate agency? And whoever wants to go first can go first.
I will put my tuppence in here. I don't mind going first at all. So, I mean, as an estate agent on the street, so to say, I come across arguments as to estate agents' fees being too high. Quite often when I'm going into people's houses, and I think my feeling is that it's a misunderstanding of the value of what we do, and potentially the agents are doing ourselves a disservice in not explaining the value of what we do. I mean, as anybody else working in the industry knows, is that it isn't just putting a property on Rightmove and waiting for the buyers to come through. You know, that is just the start of it. You know, you have to write proper descriptions so that you attract people. You have to make sure that the marketing stands out from all of the other properties, especially from us in Manchester city centre. You know, if you've got 20 apartments for sale in one block, how do you make your apartment look different from all the rest? So it is, estate agents is changing. We are marketeers now. We are not just writing property details and sticking photos on the front and hoping that somebody comes into the shop. We have to market it. We have to negotiate. We have to manage people's expectations. And all of these things that we do, we don't explain it enough to the consumer. And then when we put a bill in at the end, because we often don't take anything from them until we've sold the property for them, they just see the money and they just think, oh, that's a lot of money. What have you done for it? So I think that it's that we could do a better job of explaining what it is that we do and the value of our service.
Yes, yeah, so do you feel that actually they undervalue their service then as agents? I'm not an agent. I'm not going to pretend to be an agent, but I feel that, you know, I've heard a story the other day, and actually, Christian, I'm going to let you talk about this, but there's somebody who works in our industry who was going to put their property on the market and had their expectations as to what they wanted to pay. And that didn't happen, did it, Christian? Tell us about.
Yeah, so that was a really interesting story with Danny Nash and Ben Madden. So Danny, for people who don't know, was heavily involved with Property Academy for years. She's now sort of left, but she was on Ben Madden's Waffle podcast, No More Waffle, and it was a really fascinating insight into consumer behaviour, because, you know, she went into the process of having a property she needed to sell, a probate property, And, you know, she went very much into this mindset, this kind of property academy mindset of, oh, I know how to identify a good agent. And she looked at the metrics. And in her head, she had decided that she was more than willing to pay up to 2% plus VAT for the right agent to deliver a good sale transaction. She invited the 3 agents round, as everyone kind of recommends you do. And the one that she'd kind of earmarked as one of the kind of top performers, not only came straight in at 1%, but then instantly they said, oh, but we can do it for 0.75. And as we all know, that should be the biggest red flag when you're in evaluation, is that not necessarily the fee level, right? I'm not going to attack fee levels because every agent has their own business model. But whatever you set your fee out as, you should have confidence and faith in being able to explain to a client why you're worth that money. Mm-hmm. And if your instant reaction to saying a fee is to discount it by 25%, then what you're instantly saying is you don't have faith in the value you're going to deliver that client. And I would also argue, you know, if you can't negotiate for yourself, then how on earth are you going to negotiate on behalf of your buyer to get them the best possible sale fee? So, you know, Danny ignored that red flag and then proceeded to have an absolutely horrendous sale process with that agent. I think I remember it took something like 8 or 9 months to get, or nearly a year to get the sale over the line. But look, I think, you know, touching on what Anne talked about, the marketing bit, I think that's really all owners understand about agents. And you know, the simplification is a lot of owners and landlords think that all you do is chuck a property on a property portal, get some leads in, show them, and hey, presto, job done. Because for them, that's the only important bit for them. You've found the buyer, you found the tenant, the transaction is going to happen, supposedly. You know, but as we know on sales, what the average sale is pretty much 6 months from offer to completion. You know, and if you've got a chain of 3, 4, 5 properties, or if you're really unlucky, more, that's fun. You know, and at the moment, with the market being a little bit stale, you're increasingly seeing problems with down valuations and everything else. So finding the buyer or finding the tenant, as we all know, is a tiny bit of the actual transaction. And for sales, it is navigating. Yes, it's the prep and the marketing, but really, probably I'd argue 90% of the work is what you do when you agree a sale. And same with lettings. Like, there's some prep work, but really for lettings, it's the compliance. It's making sure that you've ticked all those boxes, you've checked about licensing and, you know, everything else in between. And that's where you earn your value. But look, I think for agents, we find it, I think we're all a bit worried that we're going to bore our clients. If we sit there and talk really technical, turgid stuff, I think we're really worried we're going to bore them to death. But the reality is you've kind of got to wade through that and really educate them on where you really deliver your value.
Yeah, and some of these, you know, vendors maybe haven't sold a house at all or haven't sold one in 10, 15, 20 years. And there's so much more legislation, more upfront things that you kind of have to pay for as agents. Obviously, I've come from Catini, which is all about onboarding, but there is so much more to what you do and what you pay for upfront. So, you know, we're seeing so many different models out there now. There's a mixture of upfront fees, there's still payments on completion, there's a blend of both where you pay a portion upfront and, you know, the rest on completion. And, you know, I suppose, David, you probably speak to lots and lots of agents as well in terms of how agents are positioning that in terms of what they're doing upfront. Are you seeing more agents charging for those services upfront now?
I think it depends. To answer the last question a little bit, I don't think there are agents. I think we need to give the agents probably a little bit more credit. I think that they are in a very difficult, almost psychological trap sometimes. It's not that they don't feel that the services that they deliver are worth the money that they're being paid. They know they work bloody hard. They know that they're there at 8 o'clock in the evening. They know that the Fridays are frantic. They know all the heavy lifting that goes on behind the scenes. And they know that we're not just marketeers. We're not just sales progressors. We're also psychologists. We're also family law mediators when we're dealing with two people that are divorcing. You name it. These sales are, anyone that tells you this is going to be a straightforward one for you is always the where 6 months later you're going to be there tearing your hair out. So I adamantly believe and advocate for everybody in our industry that we do work really, really hard. But what I think we've got is a self-esteem issue. It's the fact that when we go into the room, and even before we get there, as I'm walking up the garden path to get to the front door, I've already negotiated with myself in my head. So I know that Anne's been in before me, and that Anne is the best agent in Manchester, and that she's going to do it for a certain fee. I might be saying to myself, well, I'm not even going to risk it. I'm going to, discount my fee by X amount. And I think that those agents that have a better level of self-belief and that self-esteem and are able, therefore, to position the fee not as the elephant in the room, as in that's the difficult part of the conversation that I've left till last, but de facto, this is what we charge, and this is worth every penny of it. In much the same way that, if you're getting quotes from solicitors or surveyors, or you're going to see a doctor for a private operation, you don't haggle with the doctor on your operation. You just know that that's what it's going to cost. You don't haggle with the man that's got the scalpel in his hand. You will not haggle with the solicitor. You'll either like their approach and see value in their services and go ahead. And I think it's how we hold ourselves sometimes, and that takes work. It really takes work.
It's also about targets as well, though, right? As well, there are staff going in to do valuations who work for businesses where they are given one target, and that is how many properties they have to bring on a week, a month, or a quarter. And there are no other statistics around that. It's not about how many convert to a sale. It's not about, what fee they get. They are just told, right, this quarter, you've got to bring on at least 30 listings. And so, again, if you're sending someone into a property with that psychology, again, whether it's sales or lettings, if they know they've got to get 5 more listings on this month, or they're in trouble, or alternatively, they don't get their nice bonus, what's their primary motivation? It's not to get the property on at the right price at the best fee. It's just to get it on no matter what. And, that's another problem within certain businesses, is if you make your targets or objectives too simplistic, then staff will behave to a very simplistic kind of metric. And, if you tell someone you've got to bring on 30 properties a quarter, and that's what they do, job done. If half of those...
We've got to get better at saying no to certain business, as much as we like to say yes. We're programmed to say...
But you can't expect a member of staff to say no when their only metric that they're measured on in the office is whether they hit that number target.
Sorry, it's a really interesting point, because I was listening to a podcast last night, which was also about, kind of valuing properties. And, from this whole having a valuer within a business who is targeted to bring properties on, and, that is their motivation, is to hit those, bringing the properties on.
Yeah.
But then are they doing it at the right fee? And are they doing it at the right price? Or are they just onboarding them and just thinking, right, everybody in the office then has to deal with the fallout from that and get the price reductions and work on a lower fee, even though that they are, like you say, sitting at their desk at 8 o'clock, acting as a go-between between 100 husband and wife that are in a divorce situation, that, all of these difficult ones that we've had to be. So, I think that's a very valid point about having a valuer that goes on that is targeted just on that metric.
Well, it's that question, right? If what's better in a business, someone who brings on 15 properties and you sell and let every single one of them, or someone who brings on 45 properties in the same amount of time, but you still only sell or let 15?
Yeah. And that's really interesting to me, because I'm a salesperson, albeit as a supplier to an industry, and I always have targets, and I've always had teams that have had targets, and it's never been just about winning the deal. it's always been about that becoming a customer that drives revenue. Like you say, you can bring 20, 30 properties to market, but if 40, 50% of those deals fall through, your target is you've only hit 50% because they're actually not driven revenue into the business. So it surprises me that target still exists in agency, because in any other sales world, you don't just chuck a deal over the fence and that's it, your job's done. It's got to start generating revenue, and all the work that I suppose agents put in up front as well. So you're all sat here today, but I like Sharka, you will be putting marketing together. You'll be taking upfront payments, I'm assuming, for certain parts of that process. How do your vendors kind of receive that? What's their perception of paying an upfront fee?
So one thing I wanted to actually say, and I agree with these targets that you were talking about, because at the end of the day, it's all about bottom line. It's not about how many properties somebody brings. Those numbers are vanity. It's how many you complete and how many transactions you complete in a way that that it's as stress-free as possible. Because at the end of the day, selling the house is stressful, isn't it? And in terms of like upfront payments, I do take upfront payments. I do take upfront payments anytime, and I resorted to the fact that if people are not going to pay me for my photography, I won't take listing. I rather sell lesser amount of the properties, because I have learned not to go on the vanity of the volume, because I have set up my business so I don't have to, and I go on quality. I go on customer service. I go on quality. That's why we've got the reviews that we've got. That's why we've got customer satisfaction we've got. But also, if I, for example, take 5 properties, 10 properties, and you've got natural fallout out of the properties. What they say, what is the industry statistic, that 30% of the properties fall through, property transactions fall through. Agent cannot carry that cost, and anybody should realize what David, for example, said earlier. That's what I always say. I can't go to dentist and not to pay them.
Yeah.
The same, we are people, we have our overheads. And frankly, will I be motivated more to sell your house if I'm charging 1.5-2%, or will I be motivated to sell your house at 0.7? So, for example, now what I've got, Annalise, I've got minimum fixed cost. A minimum fixed fee. So I charge percentage, but minimum is always certain amount, and I will not, because if, for example, I'm selling a property that the percentage would fall below that, there is always minimum fee, and that usually applies if I'm, for example, offloading the landlord's assets rather than selling beautiful, expensive Cotswolds homes. So you've got obviously flats that are cheaper, and I think every agent should look at it, because okay, I'm in the area that is quite expensive, but if you go to the areas, if you go to certain parts of Manchester or cities, or some areas up north, if either make sure that the percentage stacks up that you charge, or charge fixed fee. So I charge that. I charge upfront cost for the marketing. I've got various tiers of the service that client can choose from, where they may pay the marketing cost to cover cost of my photography, EPC, whatever we need to do, and then we charge percentage at the end, or they can pay little bit more upfront, which will then reflect in percentage at the end. I charge for anti-money laundering as well, because we, as you know, we do use we do use the onboarding and anti-money laundering. I would never do the manual anti-money laundering checks anymore, because of the complexity of the legislation. I charge for that. And there is one thing about this. There are 2 things. Obviously, we are not charity. I'm not charity. I have to still pay my bills. I still have to pay staff. I still have to pay for the training. So I have to get paid for the work that I'm doing. But also, if people pay that fee, there is commitment on both sides.
Yeah.
They're also committing to me, because how I look at the sales process is a relationship, and that relationship can take as little as these days 3 months, but I had recently a transaction that completed in 2.5. Surprise, surprise. But we know how long it takes because of the conveyancing, but then relationship can be sometimes 6 to 8 months, 9 months, sometimes even
Yeah.
years. And so it's two-way street. And I
Paying
think
for your time as well, all the time you're investing into that. I know you've got your fee at the end, but what if that transaction never completes?
exactly,
And you've invested all of that time, all of that money on marketing checks. And I don't know what the percentage is across the industry, but I would assume that there's a lot of agents still out there who are not charging at all for any upfront services.
It's frightening. Your Halloween statistic is going to be something like 99% of the industry. Sharka is and all the agents actually on this panel today are unicorns. They're oddities, and they are unique because they hold themselves to a higher standard. But I speak to agents up and down the country, and not just top drawer agents that are really good. I do speak to a lot of those as well. I also speak to agents lower down the ranks as well. And the majority of agents, and it doesn't need to be defined by area, so it's not that the South is more used to paying up front than the North or anything like that, and it doesn't even go on property value necessarily. But the prevailing truth is that no sale, no fee has absolutely, we've made a rod for our own backs as an industry. And what we've done is, over the years, is we've educated the public that estate agents are the only people in the world, dustbin men and women are paid for the job that they do. Nobody expects them to do it for free. And yet estate agents can be employed to do all of this work, carry all the marketing costs, take all the time, because our time also has a value, even before you've put a property on Rightmove or any other platform. But we are the only industry out there that is expected to work completely at our own risk. And I think that there is a staggering amount of agents that don't charge anything up front, that don't have a minimum fee that is charged in any event, whether the sale goes through or not. And so therefore they're not valuing their own service, and the client then doesn't value their service. And I think Shark is absolutely right. Anybody that's not willing to pay a fraction of the amount really up front to get the marketing done is somebody that is effectively just trying before, they're testing.
Yeah. Well, they're not motivated. They're not motivated, are they?
And this is something fairly unique to the UK, though, right? I mean, that's what I find fascinating. We talk about this as an industry, but when you actually look globally, like
it's only UK.
Yeah, the average sales fee in the UK, I think now is 1.1%. The average sale fee globally is 5%.
Yeah.
So I just recently sold my father's property in Spain earlier this year, and we paid 5%. And I will hand on heart say the agents were crap.
I will like every penny then, eh?
Not some all singing or dancing. The marketing was awful. The valuations were all over the shop. The communications were terrible, absolutely terrible. And yet we were fundamentally just happy to pay it because that is the going rate. There was no question about it. I mean, it wasn't that long ago you would pay 8 to 10% when the Spanish market was booming pre-global financial crisis. You would pay an agent 8 to 10% plus IVA, which is pretty much equivalent to VAT. We're talking mega fees. And also the sales process there is much easier. Like when you agree an offer in Spain, the buyer has 7 to 10 days to put down a 10% cash non-refundable deposit. You basically exchange contracts within 7 to 10 days.
I come from Czech Republic, Christian, and it's very similar, and it's pretty much all over the world. The UK agency is the cheapest pissed.
Yeah.
And you know, when you say you paid it because that's the going rate, that's the expectation. And I think the only way we can reverse it here, that we will keep talking about this and we will keep educating other agents that they have value.
Yeah.
You know, they've got value. Also, I always say to people, I say it in a jest, but I said, I am estate agent, don't shoot me. I am a human being too.
Yeah.
You know,
Look, I think one of the other problems we have with our industry is we've had multiple attempts to disrupt agency, right? But primarily, what disruption really means is undercut the industry.
And lowering standards.
We've had companies come in with big backing, big marketing campaigns, who have actively devalued the public perception. You know, Purple Bricks, when they launched, their initial marketing campaign was freaking genius for them. It was brilliant. And that resulted in that early, you know, domination that they got when they first launched. But their message was fundamentally, agents aren't worth what you pay them.
Yeah.
And there continues to be well-funded businesses disrupting our industry, but they're not disrupting it from a service level. They're not disrupting it by delivering higher prices, you know, faster completions, greater assurance of sale. And really, fundamentally, they are coming at the industry from one point and one point only, and that is, we'll do it cheaper.
And it's not just cheaper though, is it?
I wondered how far it went. We now have, we had until recently the biggest estate agency doing it for free.
Yeah. But it's not even just the undervaluing. There's, you know, I was talking to Anne last night when I was calling her to come on and join us today. But there's an agent that we won't say who they are, Anne, just because they were on the webinar. But there's an agent there's an online portal that now agents can go and vendors can go and list their own properties with no compliance, no, you know, I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically saying to vendors, bypass an agent, do it all yourself, you know, forget the risks and do your own marketing, do your own viewings and pay, I think it was £90, something like that to list.
It's £100, and it's you know, from I've obviously been in a estate agency for a very long time, and you know, these it's kind of like we've had it in lettings for ages, where landlords can just go and market their own properties, and kind of we know that the thought process of any of the landlords that go on those kind of sites, it used to be Gumtree and even Facebook Marketplace and these kind of, it was the kind of thought process within us is that the tenants that go to those kind of portals or go to find a property there are the tenants that think that they're not going to pass referencing through another agency, you know, through an actual agency. So having a portal for vendors to go and sell their properties at a very, very low price, you know, who are you going to attract on the other side of it? You know, which buyers are you going to get? I mean, there's going to be, you know, I believe in choice. I believe that vendors should have a choice. If they want to go and try and sell their house for £99 and do it all on their own, then that's their prerogative. It will work for people who are professional people and know about the property market and can progress their own sale. But for the people that we tend to find that go with the low cost agencies, they're not experienced. You know,
but how many people do you know, Anne, that don't work in our industry that know what the sales process looks like?
Oh, they don't. You know, and even because Joe Blogs on the street that is selling their house, they, you know, even if they sold a couple of houses, they have a belief of what they think the process is, but they don't actually know, because the landscape changes so often, and the compliance and the legislation and everything is changing on a regular basis. Joe Blogs isn't going to keep up to date with that. So they could have a belief of the last time that they sold their house 15 years ago. This is what I needed to do to make sure that I gave all of the relevant information. But that's changed now.
It changes every month, I think.
I think I'm I'm with Anne, but I'm not pro-choice at all. I don't believe anybody should have the choice. I think that that's something that also needs to change. And I think, you know, you alluded earlier to, you know, changes in the house buying process and the sort of things that we're going to have to do. The missing piece of the puzzle, and I know this will make Sharka smile, but the missing piece of the puzzle is regulation. It is agents having qualifications. It is us using professional people, because, you know, you might say, well, these guys shouldn't be able to act for themselves for 99 quid. The sad fact of it is that they can go to an agent for 2,000 quid and still get as bad a service as they would have been doing themselves, which is negligent and on all the rest. So we've seen it, and I think that needs to change. But I wouldn't assume that I know how to change the exhaust pipe on my car by myself. I think that's quite complicated. I wouldn't give myself a kidney operation just by myself. I'll have a go, save a few quid. And so we need to sort of get away from this point of view that a house buying or house selling process is simple. Yes, we want to make it simple to interact with, and great platforms like Catini, for instance, are making that job very easy to onboard people and to get them onto the market. And we as agents are there to make it seem seamless. But let's be honest, behind the scenes, in the kitchen, the food is going to taste amazing and you're going to have a wonderful experience. It's going to be the best night of your life. But in the kitchen, it is mayhem and chaos in there. And we're shouting at each other. And there's a lot of effort that goes into every dish that we prepare. And I think that we need to be able to convey that properly with respect. But I think also we've got a lot of work to do to get us to the point where actually regulation and a little bit of red tape in there to make sure that, yeah, people don't have that choice to just to act negligently, and that you need to go to an agent who is an expert, who's been trained, who knows what they're doing. And I think
there is a reason why agents have the reputation they do. You know, that's as much as we all would like to bang fists on the wall and shout and insist otherwise, because we know there is a segment of the market which does deliver phenomenal service results and professionalism. But the fact of the matter is, you know,
it's a minority, not a majority.
Exactly. I would say at least 1 in 3 transactions, whether it's sales or lettings with an agent, there is at least someone getting a bad experience there.
I have always been very pro qualifications and pro regulations. This is something that I've noticed in obviously the next that they're coming out with to say that is something to be put in place. I mean, when I started in the property industry back in '98, the reason I joined the business that I did was because qualifications were woven into the actual progression. So you couldn't progress within that company unless you went through the Property Mark qualifications. So we had a business full of everybody with your level 3s. So, you know, I started off on my level 2. I've got both my level 3s in lettings and sales, and the level 4 as well, ahead of anything coming in with Roper. And I've put that in with my team as well, that it becomes part of their development plans is to get qualifications, because I strongly believe that we should be creating a industry of people that are professionally recognized with the relevant Property Mark qualifications, and not just, you know, anybody going on Instagram and trying to sell some properties.
But I think the other problem we face with that, right, which is the same problem we face now with compliance, is it's not properly funded, it's not properly enforced.
No.
Okay. Yeah. And that is qualifications fundamentally. I don't think any good quality agent is ever going to fundamentally have an issue with mandatory qualifications and turning our industry into a bona fide profession. But if it's not policed, if it's not enforced, then it just sits in the pile with everything else we already do. That is just a burden on good businesses. Because it doesn't get impacted. And this is the same with, you know, sell yourself landlord, you know, let yourself landlords or sell yourself vendors or whatever. Unless that is properly policed and enforced, it's relatively immaterial, because there's still going to be those chances, those jokers around doing whatever they want because they know the likelihood of them getting caught. You know, we hear these odd stories about a landlord or an agent getting fined here, but we know that as a drop in the ocean in the overall landscape of compliance.
Christian,
So,
I want to pick on what you said about also the cost of the business owners. So we've got obviously various size businesses across the UK. We've got smaller businesses, we've got bigger businesses. And I believe the qualifications should be really affordable. So any employer is able to put members of staff through the qualifications, as Anne just said, that it's part of the development plan. I always offer qualifications to any employee that comes to business and want to drive them to the qualifications purely for that reason, to increase the quality in the industry. And I believe that with general overheads that any business has got, and we know that they are really high overheads, if the qualifications are made really affordable, and they are encouraged from the start, this is also another thing. As you know, I'm involved, and so is David, with Property Mark Trust. And for example, Property Mark Trust offers grants for the qualifications. And I think there should be more of that and more of understanding to make people proud of being qualified. And actually, I believe people really need to learn to be proud of being a estate agent. You know, once we are all proud of what we are doing, it will be easier to go to valuation and say, these are my fees. If you don't like it, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's funny, like you say, it's like you have to defend your job title, who you are and what you do, because of that misconception of like, oh yeah, sorry, I'm an estate agent.
Yeah.
You don't get many others like that unless you're like a parking attendant or something like that. Nobody likes parking. Sorry to all the parking attendants, but you know, we don't. It's true. But there is like hidden cost. That's another hidden cost in your business, isn't it? It's your qualifications, it's your team's qualifications, it's your memberships and all of that sort of stuff. And we focus really heavily on portals and things like that and the marketing overheads, but there are other hidden costs to running a business as well that aren't just what the vendor sees on the portals.
Exactly. Insurances, you know, the vendor, and we need to, Anne mentioned Property Mark. I'm Property Mark member and the regional exec, and I believe that no matter what approving body you belong to, you know, whether it's Property Mark, Guild, or whatever, again, we need to educate people that when we belong to this approving body, that they have some sort of safety net, some sort of guarantees that if something goes wrong, there is redress, you know.
Yeah.
And these are all these hidden costs that we are just mentioning, Annalise. They need to be made clear to people, so they know that we have huge costs before we
Huge
even
overheads.
put our on and go to that valuation.
I think there's also a responsibility, right? On the, you know, we keep on talking about portals. I think there is also, I think there is a greater duty of care to our industry. I feel we should see from certain entities like portals, from the big money businesses that sit within our sector, that generate lots of money and lots of profit. And I think, Saki, you're absolutely right. You know, driving up accessibility to training and education and the ongoing professionalization of our industry benefits everyone, right? So you could even argue that for big entities like portals, driving up the standards of our industry so we can charge more, so our businesses can generate more, so our businesses can, in theory, pay more. You could argue that it's also self-serving as an ecosystem. So, you know, I know that some of the big entities do some investment into that, into charity, and you know, there are some courses. But it would be nice to see the bigger companies, like I said, with the big revenues and the big margins, maybe going a little bit further, maybe doing a little bit more, maybe also helping to educate consumers, because it's it's hard to engage with a client and develop that trust where they also want to sit and listen and value everything that you have to say about all technical elements of what you do, whether you sell or let. But maybe the big consumer brands, your Rightmove, your Zooplas, your, whatever else, maybe it's really them that should be educating our consumers from a highly respected public brand, being like, this is what you think agency is. You couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah.
This is what agency really is.
It'd be lovely if we fast forward into the future where some of this sort of regulation is coming in and it's changing. If those brands were able to say, actually, all our agents on Rightmove are the ones with qualifications. You cannot just come in here if you're Joe Nobody. We're only going to let people that are qualified. And to give one of the big brands their due, they do provide access and a good route to qualification. There's some good stuff that they do, but they can do more of it. But I think that the difficulty is that whilst Property Mark are out there sort of they've never changed their tune. Qualification is necessary. We'd welcome regulation. And whilst some of the bigger brands are out there going, it just makes sense for you to be qualified, until government then come up behind us and go, you have to be qualified, then unfortunately it's not a level playing field. So we're all playing with different hands and some of us are playing different games. So
it's something on lettings that you're going to start seeing Zoopla doing more. So I sit on the Zoopla Lettings Advisory Board with Zoopla. And the last couple of board meetings we've had a lot of conversation, obviously about the Renters' Rights Bill, but also how do we educate landlords and tenants about those changes, but also what a compliant tenancy looks like, what a good landlord and a good letting agent and a good property manager looks like. And like I said, it's really hard to get that message out as an individual brand. And we're really excited to see how Zoopla achieves that. Again, we've got quite a broad representation on the board of business sizes. And all of us are going to be chipping in to create content that hopefully comes with authority of our experience within the industry, but carried by the Zoopla brand. And it's going to be really interesting to see how over time that goes down, but I think we need those big consumer brands to kind of start working with us to get this message across and start educating consumers and customers about what good really looks like, about what compliance really looks like. Maybe a little bit of scaring, a little bit of, this is what happens if there are some horror stories out there. There are some people getting slapped with some pretty terrifying fines or, getting stung with things. So yeah, I think we need those very public facing brands to maybe now collaborate with our industry and start, leveraging the considerable knowledge and expertise and experience that we've got across all different segments of our industry. And just helping to educate consumers, because I think ultimately consumers just don't really understand 95% of what we all do.
And on the sales side, I suppose there's not really any repercussions for a vendor if they use an agent that doesn't do things. It's on the agent, yes, like for them to do the compliance, all the, all of the box ticking and everything else that you need to do. But there's no repercussions on the vendor if that doesn't happen. It's on the agent. So that's my opinion, is why they don't care which agent they choose, because the repercussions ultimately land on the agent and not on the vendor. Or am I wrong?
See, because in lettings it still lands on the landlord.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That's why I was asking the question.
And the shocking truth is that in a lot of cases they will have a go at both, and they will leave it to you to legally find out who the person with control over the money, control over the property was. They'd have to look at whether or not the landlord can delegate their authority properly to the agent. But the message should be that neither party can afford to rely on the fact that the other one's going to be liable, because We
But-
carry very, very
But
heavy.
vendors don't know. Vendors don't. Most vendors. I mean, you are great agents that are on this call, but you know how many vendors are told exactly what compliance steps need to happen in the background? How many vendors are told exactly what documentation needs to be filed? And not many. Like there aren't many.
It depends. It depends what kind of agent you are. It is an ultimate passion killer that before you jump into bed with a vendor, you go, by the way, I need to tell you, I've got all of these different diseases. You should be checked out before we get going. And in the same way, those agents that carry around with them the 132 pieces of legislation on a piece of paper and go, do you realize these are all going to land you in jail? I don't personally advocate for that being your business winner. I don't think we should use fear as the motivation for trust.
No.
I think the motivation from trust comes that, you know, we know what we're doing. We will, of course, take care of it. And you need to convey that. Christian was right there, right at the top of the show. He said, we're in danger of boring people. They don't want to sit there and listen to us read off all the legislation. No vendor in the world wants to hear me complain about my professional indemnity insurance, what I have to pay my staff in terms of national insurance, the fact that I need to educate them and I need to pay my Property Mark membership as well, etc., etc., etc. But there are ways of us changing what we convey. You don't need to, in every conversation in life, there's a lot that gets read between the lines. We don't necessarily need to spit out every word, but what we need to be able to do when we send people into those living rooms is to win their confidence and assure them that actually Sharka knows exactly what she's saying, Anne knows what she's saying, and Christian knows what they're saying, and we can rely on it. Not only that, we've got some social proof that proves it. And I think Christian was right. We need to get bigger bodies acknowledging the qualifications matter as well. I saw a lot of photos this weekend of everybody with shiny awards from Esther's, and we're going to see that over the next couple of months. We're going to get sick of all this success. But how much of that success, when you dig beneath the surface, actually do they follow all the protocols? Does it matter to the people awarding these awards whether or not these people have put in the hard yards? Do they know whether they've got qualifications? Do they know whether they invest in their staff's development? So I think we've got a big joined up piece to do here, but communication is as much about what you don't say as what you do say. And I think it's just the positioning of it, which is why you're still going to need trainers to tell you what to do in that living room and how to convey it. But it's work to be done, definitely.
Yeah.
David,
first of all, congratulations, Christian and Sharka, on your Esther's Awards.
Thank you. What I wanted to actually follow up on what David just said is at the end of the day, the client doesn't care what troubles we've got. They want their house sold. That's all they care. They want their house sold and they want to have it as stress-free as possible. And it's really important that they have those assurances. They obviously believe in our abilities when we pitch ourselves as an agent, but they need to also understand that if something would go wrong, that there is redress. There are too many things. If you think, I always say that selling house or the need for safe home is one of the basic needs, human basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy, and we need to ensure as agents that our clients feel safe. They feel safe, and we deliver what we say we deliver. And it's really important, and that's obviously up to the trainers in the industry to educate agents how to deliver such pitch.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that was a lot of information. Good chat. So my last question, and this is just about the recent home buying reform stuff, the overhaul that they're looking to do in the industry. Whilst we're talking about fees, and this is a question for all of you, Do you think that mandatory disclosures, so things that have to be done up front now, things that looking like searches, all of these other bits and pieces, will help agents justify higher upfront fees because they'll have transparency? Or do you think agents are still going to carry the can?
I don't know whether it will help justifying higher fees. I personally think it will help with the fall through rates, because if you've got everything transparently upfront, if I know that the house that I am buying has got subsidence, and if I know it as an agent, so if I know it as a seller, as a buyer, then I know what I'm buying. I'm not surprised when the survey comes through halfway through the transaction. I'm buying it already with that in mind. As an agent, and that's why we should have material information no matter what government says or not. As an agent, if I am valuing the house, if I go on that valuation and I don't know that it has good subsidence, I will value it at certain price. If then I have all this information up front, I can go to the seller and tell them before we even launch the property, look, actually, we valued it at this and this money, but this came up. I don't think that valuing it at the level we said previously would be reasonable, because there are issues. So I definitely think it will help with the fall through. Not sure. I think the fees, it's still the mental job. It's still in us really being able to justify better.
And still people undercutting.
Yeah, and have, there will be always people who will undercut, that's just the way it is, in life. There will be always people who will probably want to operate on their kidney, David, it's just the way it is. But we need to make sure that we talk to people who want quality service, who want security, who want to make sure that they get the best money and best service, and basically charge accordingly. It's all about education.
Yeah. Go on, David. You look like you were pondering.
No, I was just thinking that as always, and we've had this discussion before, so I know you're all going to roll your eyes, but as always, when we talk about legislation changes, there have already been certain changes that are mandatory that we know that other competing agents out there are ignoring on a daily basis, and we also know that the authorities who police it are woefully understaffed, that are woefully under-resourced, and therefore when you do see those headlines of massive fines being applied, they are ridiculous. But the reason that they do that is because they need to take some action, and it needs to be headline grabbing, and it needs to be scary enough. But the honest to God truth is that there aren't enough people out there enforcing it. So it's all well and good bringing it in. It's all well and good telling us that we need to do it. But I know for a fact that after we introduce these mandatory sort of disclosures that need to go through, in 6 months' time, there'll still be agents who are taking on properties that are not doing it, and there'll still be the big entities who are allowing those agents to upload those properties to their websites and to display them without double checking that that's been done as well. So we need some joined up thinking. It's going to take a village to get this done.
Yeah.
And we need to pull together to do it. And I think we also need to value ourselves, but we need the government to value what we do as well, and to back us on it, and to throw some resource at it. And it'll be money well spent, because we're going to improve people's lives. We'll improve transaction processes. We've already got some great technology with some great efficiencies that are being delivered, that enable us to deliver this fantastic service and to comply. There's no excuse anymore, but we just need everybody to pitch in.
We know what we don't want, right? We don't want another HIPS.
No.
Yeah. So let's just take that. Let's take that as the case study, because that was meant to be
the HIPS don't lie.
Thread, and it was poorly structured, poorly implemented, poorly thought out, and it did nothing but create an extra burden and cost that changed nothing in the transaction. So I'm very, very happy to keep my comments light on the sales side, because lettings is definitely my wheelhouse. But look, any idea the government comes up with, it's got to be practically efficient, effective, and enforceable. It's got to deliver substantial change, and it's got to be something that is rigorously, as David said, rigorously enforced.
And there's too many outliers as well. You know, you've got too many different stakeholders in different parts of this process as well. You've got conveyancers, you've got estate agents, you've got suppliers, you've got land reg. You know, bringing all of those types of things together with one, you know, onboarding is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
One last question. I said there was one more, but I'm going to do a full-on Columbo thing of just one more thing. If you could change one thing about how our industry approaches fees, whether that's structure, communication, education, what would it be? And I'll start with you, Christian.
Own it. That is my one thing. Own it. Be confident in the value that you deliver for the fee that you charge, and ensure that when you walk in that door, you can justify whatever it is. In whichever way you choose to do that, whether that's success rate, achieved price, whatever, the customer experience, walk in, own it, don't negotiate.
Love it. Shaka, go on.
For me, educate. I obviously agree with what Christian said. Educate people why you are charging it, and make sure that you do charge upfront fees, or when I say upfront fees, that you get paid for your overheads, like photography and any other things.
Yeah. Anne?
I suppose mine would be stopping the race to the bottom. You know, there was another conversation that we had last night, you know, with somebody that had come in and launched a kind of £950, you know, that are basically just trying to do everything at volume. You know, they'd have to sell five houses a month to make the business work. And it's let's stop undervaluing ourselves and going for this race to the bottom. I suppose that's the one thing that I would change on fees.
Get what you're worth.
Get what you're worth, and by collaborating and by coming together as an industry and saying, yes, we do deserve some fees up front for the marketing. You know, people want these drone photos, twilight photos, you know, all of the social media adverts, etc., and they all come at a cost. So, you know, let's stop trying to undercut this and actually place the value on what we do.
Yeah. And last by no means least, Minty.
Invest in it. I don't care how long you've been in this industry and how long you've been doing the job, 20 years, 30 years, we all get jaded. Don't expect people to perform really well without constantly practicing and training. They need, you know, footballers don't just turn up on the Saturday and expect to excel. They train the whole week for that 1 hour that they're going to be running around out there. We need to keep doing it, and we need to keep investing in ourselves in that way. We need to keep drumming it into our head that we're worth it. We need to practice the words. We need to have at our disposal the phrases that work that magic in the living room. So don't just expect it to come. Don't expect to learn it once and to be able to do it again in 10 years' time, the same way that you've got passion for it today. You need to keep training that muscle. And if you don't, it will wither, and your confidence will wither with it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much to you all for your time today. Been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Good day. Bye.